first item on the agenda is consider approving the minutes from the February 26th meeting.
I move we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Move second, all in favor? Consider signing a liquor renewal license for the Decker Simmons place.
And a special amusement.
And a special meeting, sorry.
Seems we got the police department here. We got any problems up there?
Really haven't, to speak
Okay.
of now, so.
I'd make a motion we accept this, grant their new license.
Second.
Move second, all in favor? Third item, consider signing a liquor renewal license for the Riverside Farm Market and a special amusement, sorry.
No problems down there either, I assume.
No, sir.
I'd make a motion we grant his license.
Second.
Move second, all in favor?
I do have 2 pages to sign on each one.
We're on a roll.
Yeah, I know you. That's why I'm interrupting.
You can pass it down, do you continue or do you want to?
Continue.
Okay. The next item is, item number 4 is to consider appointment of RSU 18 Board of Directors to fill an unexpired term.
I can update you on the progress of that since we last discussed it. Tom Burton had indicated his continuing interest, and so just to refresh your memories, I included his biographical material in your packet for you to review. There had also been a piece in the newspaper asking for interested citizens to alert us of their desire to be considered, which generated one response from a lady who had decided after further consideration that she did not wish to have her name put forward. So there was the one response, but that's all I had, in addition to Tom's. And so the recommendation is that we fill the position, which will be effective July 1, with Tom Burton, who I think is here to answer any questions that the board may have.
I'd make a motion we appoint Tom to this position.
Second motion.
Questions? Comments? None? Motion's moved, second, all in favor? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you for your continued interest in it. No, it's good, it's a good thing to do. Next item is to review a pay plan proposed by the police department, which is supposed to take effect on 7/1.
Yeah, this one is on your agenda. We had a conversation, the chairman, the chief, and I, and we thought that this would be appropriate to bring before the council this evening. Our memo has been prepared, and it was in your packet. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at that. Chief, would you like to present the memo?
I can certainly do that. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read it or not, but I generally what I did is listed out for you what the current hourly rate is for each officer, what that would be with a 2% increase, and what my proposal was, and then what the difference would be between my proposal and the 2% increase. I think I spelled it out. I don't know if you've had a chance to read this, but I think I spelled out pretty well in there what my reasoning was behind that. I also added in a biography for each officer, how many years of service they've had, part-time, full-time, PTFD. I probably should have explained that a little better, but that's what that means. How many years they've had with the Oakland Police Department in particular, and then what they have for schooling, secondary, post-secondary. And then I also made note on the bottom of all the specialty training that the various officers have had as well, and what their expertise are there. So I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I feel pretty strongly that this is the fair thing to do. I don't consider it a raise as much as I consider it an equalizing of what the pay scale is for each officer, because there's such a disparity there that it's hard to explain even why it is what it is, if that makes sense. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's the first question.
Yeah.
How were decisions made to pay them what they got paid when they were hired
Well, they're all over the place because they were all hired at different times, over several years. So they were brought in under pay scales from those years. And then they were just given what everybody got every year since then. So if you got an officer that was hired 10 years ago and brought in at that pay scale, the 1% or 2% or no percent or whatever raises they had every year might not have kept them up to pace with what the current pay scale would be bringing somebody in on lateral entry. So that's kind of how it happened over the years.
So
And
Gary Bowman is on the first page, just picking him out because it's the first page.
Yes.
He's at the highest pay.
for patrolmen.
So
Yes.
when did he get hired?
He's been here, well, if you look at the,
Next page.
if you look at the biography, it'll tell you how many years of experience he has. Gary Bowman has 15 years, 1 year part-time, 14 years full-time, and he's been with Oakland for 14 years. So he
do
was
they-
hired 14 years ago.
So do they all start at the same entry pay scale, or?
It depends on, and see, that's why there's such a disparity, is because not only are they brought in at different times, with those times pay scales, but those pay scales also varied over time based on what their experience was when they were brought in. I guess to explain that a little better for you, Don, if you look at Mike Sayers, he was brought in at $19 at a starting rate because he was basically fresh out of the academy. So that's what that pay scale was that we had built in.
So do we have a starting pay amount? If we brought somebody in today, fresh out of the academy, what would we pay them?
Well, it would depend. While fresh out of the academy, it would still be the $19.
And then when would they go up to, I guess,
July.
do we have a sequence where after 3 years you go up to another level, or is it just you
Yes.
start at 19, you go up with whatever pay raises?
Longevity pay
Which would,
goes up a certain percentage after 3 different years. Then it went up a different percentage. Gary Bowman's at the top. At the top, he's been here over 10 years, so he's at the top of what that pay scale would be. I'd never really agreed with that. That was kind of something that was left over from a long, long time ago when we had a union here, which is back when Joel was the chief. Because when Kevin came, they did away with the union. We voted it out.
so how long has Mike been here?
Mike Sayers, he's been here a year.
So we would be basically doing away with any type of longevity pay by doing this.
And I would, and the reason that I would do, yeah, we would be doing away with longevity pay.
Except for a
This
new
is
person
built in.
coming out of the academy.
I don't think, it still wouldn't matter.
Would it be
If I
paid in the-
hired somebody when this goes through, if I hired somebody after July 1, I'd bring them in at tops pay.
So there
Because
would
they're
just
doing
be-
the same job.
There would just be one rate regardless.
There would be one rate. I mean, patrolman, if you were hired as a patrolman, you would be hired at the patrolman rate,
And basically the same with,
and the sergeant as well. And those are the only 2 pay scales that we have, not including the captain and I are both on salary, at an hourly rate, we're at a salary, so.
So we don't, I guess, more about Don's question, we don't have any thing in the policy that says you hired at X dollars, and in 6 months, you're gonna get reviewed and become permanent and get so much raise, and then when you get a year's experience, you'll get top rate or some other
Well,
rate or something.
All we have right now in there, which we would do away with, is the longevity. So,
and where is that longevity? Is it a policy or
uh,
is it just a practice? Is it
It's-
unwritten?
it's a practice that Doug has written down on what the percentage is based on certain things. I don't know that's necessarily a policy, to be honest with you. I know that he has it in writing, and what, after so many years you get 3%, and then after so many more years you get 2% or 4% after 10 years, or whatever that is. I couldn't tell you what it is. Doug could. But that would go away.
I have one question. Has Tracy Frost been in the Oakland PD for 12 years?
Tracy Frost, I believe he has, yeah. Tracy Frost has been for 12 years with the Oakland Police Department, yes. He has 21 and a half years total. But he's been with us for 12.
Worked for railroad a while.
he worked Waterville PD twice, and he worked the railroad in between. Yeah. He got laid off from the railroad, went back to Waterville PD, and left there to come back here, which is where he wanted to be, but we had no openings when he was laid off with the railroad, so he went back to Waterville.
I know you know, Mike, that we had some big discussions during budget time about trying to bring some people up to the level they should be at, and too big a jump was too big a jump and all
Yeah.
that, and,
Yeah.
and this is 13.3%, if I got it right on Mike's savings.
The only thing that I would say about that is, when those are, I see those more as raises to bring people up for I don't wanna say state level, because really, well, it kind of is, but we're looking at, with those raises, as Peter described to you, we're looking at over the state, what people in the same positions are making. Whereas here, this is internal. I mean, we're paying a patrolman. Officer Bowman, for example, we're paying him $21.48 now, and he'll be going up to $21.91. Now, I don't know why he should be making more than Gene Richard, who's been here a lot longer than Gary Bowman has. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's a disparity in-house with this, where it's an inequity, rather than, trying to maintain a level at the state level. We're talking about it with this just in Oakland, doing the same job. Why we're not paying people the same?
I guess the two things, and I'm not against doing something like this, but I think there are two things that we've got to be very careful about, and I guess I'd ask Peter to maybe give us some feedback in the future. I'm not expecting you to have it on top of your head now, but when we and Peter developed the increases in the budget for some people, I think there was an understanding that we were going to continue to look at that, and in the future years, other people in departments were going to move along. And I don't know what other departments in town have similar situations. Do the public works, or do we have people who are making different amount of money doing the same job? Do we have people in the fire department, and in any departments, and I know police probably and the public works is the biggest, but I guess I'd like to know, do we have other areas? Because as soon as we act on this one, we're gonna have another group coming to us and say, well, we have the same situation. Not to say we shouldn't do it for everybody, but I'd like to know before we discuss this too far, what the rest of the employees are doing. I'd also like to find out a little bit about whatever policy or practice we've had, because at some point, somebody thought it was appropriate to have a longevity, where the first year you got this, and after 3 years and 7 years you got bumped up. And if how strong that policy is, we can obviously change it, but I guess I'd like to know what that practice was and have some discussion about whether we should continue that.
That practice, as I explained, came from the union.
Right.
And it was held on.
But we're still
Since then.
following that.
Oh, we have, yeah.
And I guess I'm not opposed to necessarily changing it, but I guess I'd like to know a little more about it before I, say how far we should go. It might be, there's a 1 year, you mentioned a probation. The first year, you're at a certain pay, and then you're guaranteed to go up to whatever everybody else gets at the second year if everything goes all right. I don't know. That may be something we want to look at. Again, I'd like to see what other employees are getting, and I guess the third part is, are the people in the town going to look at this as, wait a second, you outlined these 7 people who are going to get these substantial raises, and now we're adding more people to that, which may be justifiable. But I guess we have to keep that in mind as we consider all of these things. So again, I'm one who says, the position is the most important thing to determine what a person makes. It's not how long they've been in a position. Unfortunately, unions and associations drive that with contracts, and you can't do anything about it. But if we don't have that, we can do what we want. So in general, I support the idea. I just want to make sure we've touched base on all other things that this might have ramifications on before we go too far.
Yeah, I'd like to indicate something that's been said when I made my proposals. I was trying to be clear that those were additional costs to the budget beyond the normal, cost of living increase that, we were making provision for others. And I think it was discussed as an extra cost to the town, and that's kind of why we wound up where we did. The numbers that back up what the chief is describing here were contained in the proposal that he made. But the discussion has been called forth since that we talk about this evening. But this is not an additional cost to the budget beyond what you've already seen, whereas the ideas that I was bringing to you were clearly extra and identified as such and discussed that way. But I would like to be clear that this is not an additional amount this evening beyond what you've already considered. It's within what was presented recently. But the discussion was indicated based on some questions that we've identified as appropriate for discussion this evening.
Have you talked to Gary Smith about this, because that, just for the school budget itself, it has $4,014.40. I have their budget, and their budget is only increased and shown a 2% increase for them. Are we going to pick this up here? Are we going to pick up the difference?
No, it's still
Or they will, you
it's
know,
a 75-25 split. And I know the budget with the school, they just plugged in what they plugged in, not knowing what the bill was yet, because they have to wait until our budget goes through.
yeah. I just didn't know if you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
If you made aware, I just thought.
They have 2% in there, I know that, I checked the budget.
yep.
Let's see, the other. Is Todd Burbank is the other school
Yes, sir.
resource?
Yes.
So he's getting 4.33%. And I think the other thing we need to discuss here is the Tracy Frost getting moved up to the sergeant's pay too, is something that we had not had any plans on when he was made a sergeant.
Well, nor did we for the other sergeant. The only one we talked about the pay was Pete Tibbetts. This is bringing up 2 out of 3 sergeants up to that pay scale. Because we also did not give Dave Savage a raise either when he was made sergeant.
25 cents?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we give 20.
But we did,
50
because I found that in my budget.
50 cents.
Yeah,
The
25.
Discussion was.
20,
It was 25. Yep. And that was because I had that in my budget, because I had people out.
50 cents or something, you know, maybe, it
It's-
doesn't matter,
it was
anyway.
25
There was I know there was a
Yeah.
raise discussed at the time to making him a sergeant over the regular patrol job that he had.
Yep.
You done discussing, or just bring it up for a comment?
I don't know.
I personally have a hard time with the police department having that many sergeants, but I understand why we have a 10-man department, and then I have never seen it in any other department, and I'm not trying to be contradictory, I'm not trying to be mean, but we have a 10-man department, and we have 5 supervisors and 5 patrolmen. CMP doesn't do that, Bath Iron Works doesn't do that, the state of Maine doesn't do that, the bus garage doesn't do that,
They don't do what we do.
no other police department does that. Yes.
They do. The only difference would be
They
that
don't have
instead
one
of 3,
supervisor per person.
they would have a lieutenant and 2 sergeants instead of 3 sergeants.
So,
But
I mean,
that's
this has just been brought to
standard.
my attention and
Well,
asked, and
Well,
I.
the thing is though, Mike, we have 2 patrol sergeants
Mhm.
that do patrol. They split up the week, so we have 2 nighttime supervisors, and that was the discussion we had about sergeants. The third sergeant, which we've had for a long time, is the supervisor for the school resource officers, which the school resource officers pretty much work out there on their own in those schools every day. I mean, I'm not there to supervise everything they do. The captain's not there to supervise everything they do where we are for the patrolmen every day. So you need to have a supervisor when you have 2 SROs that are in the schools. I mean, I started out the SRO program myself when I was a captain. And you need to be a supervisor to be able to make the decisions you can make, that you need to make on a daily basis as a school resource officer. They're working at the high school alone. They have over 1,000 people there during the daytime when they're working, that they're patrolling by themselves.
And I will say,
And then you add the rest of the district in. I mean, it's
I will say, hands down, Tracy Frost does a phenomenal job. Anytime
Absolutely.
we call him at the bus garage, he's right there. Anytime, and he does a phenomenal job. So I'm not arguing.
I
the
understand
point,
completely.
but
I'm just trying
I'm
to
not-
explain to you why it is the way it is.
We're gonna have to bring that budget to the town, and the town's perception sometimes is they don't see all these things. Hopefully they can see some of this tonight if they
Yeah.
watch it. You know, hopefully they can watch it and say, okay, I do understand. And do I understand that we need a sergeant? Yeah, I do, I wholeheartedly do. You know, but I'm just saying that we need to make sure that if my understanding last year is when we, taking personalities out of it, when we brought him on last year, it was an unpaid sergeant's position. As I say, unpaid, he was not paid as a sergeant. And
He
now
didn't
it-
get any extra money.
Right, and he
for
didn't get
sergeant.
any extra pay, but all the extra responsibility, all the extra work that goes along with it.
Yep.
And now we're trying to compensate him for that.
That's
Is
what it
that
boils
correctly
down to.
said?
Very fair statement.
But that is not going over well from what I hear with the other people in the department who weren't given a chance at this either.
That's not a fair statement, because they absolutely were. They were given the chance. They were told when Dusty left that the replacement for the school resource officer would be a sergeant. It was opened up to all the officers. There was a memo put out to them. They were told that if they were interested in being an SRO, it was going to be an SRO sergeant, not a patrol sergeant. That's what Tracy Frost is. The only person that showed any interest was Bryant Laverdier, and he 2 days later came in and said, you know what, really don't want to be an SRO, not interested anymore. He was the only one that was interested. So Tracy Frost was interested, and Tracy Frost was promoted to sergeant as a result. So if there's somebody that's not happy about that, they certainly didn't bring it to my attention, which would have been the route to take, I would think. But
So the 3 sergeants have different responsibilities?
2 are patrol sergeants. The other one is a school resource officer sergeant, a detective sergeant. A school resource officer is a detective rank, and he is a detective sergeant.
So he
School
is,
resource officer.
who does he supervise?
He supervises the program, which is basically himself and Todd Burbank.
Is there any kind of a description, job description
Absolutely,
for each of the different sergeants?
yes.
And are they completely equal in responsibility level, supervision, reporting, whatever? If I was to look at the 3 positions of sergeants, I would guess that we have 2 that are identical
Yep,
and 1 that's different.
one that's different because it's a school
Could
resource
anybody make
officer.
an argument that one position is more difficult, more responsible than the others?
Well,
And
I
the reason
think-
I ask that is because if that's the case, then they shouldn't necessarily be getting the same pay. And if we're looking at overhauling how we pay people, we have to at least take that into consideration. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but we need to be able to say, when we look at everything that they do and all the responsibilities and their liabilities and all that, they're equal.
I would say that's a fair statement that they are equal. They're supervising their program. One is supervising a patrol program.
Number of people,
One is, well, I mean, yeah,
number of kids, like you just said, being responsible for 1,000 kids is a very responsible job. Being a patrol sergeant probably also is a very, so I'm not trying to equate, I just wanna know,
Well, the
make
thing
sure
is-
that everybody's thought through it enough to say, yeah, in my eyes, and I don't think anybody can say differently, those three positions are close enough in everything that they should be the same rate.
I think they absolutely are, and yes, that has been discussed. Yep. They're certainly different, but they're similar as well. The supervisory roles at a sergeant's level. And all three of them would report to the captain.
Comments?
There's some commented out.
Me too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Your time.
Can I understand that we can proceed with this?
Would you like a vote on that?
Well, I
Or would
just
you
don't
like
wanna
a motion?
misstep. I don't wanna assume that we can proceed if that's not your desire.
I would like to get some more information and have some time to think to see if there is a rationale for, well, first of all, you know, I think we should have something written that becomes a document that we would accept, and I would like to think a little bit about the idea of longevity, what we had before, what we may want to put in if we do want to, and I'm not saying we want to do anything, but I just haven't thought or had a chance to discuss or think about the implications sufficiently to be ready to say, yeah, jump forward or don't go forward. So I guess I'm not ready to make my decision.
Do we want to revisit this at our next meeting? Which would be the night. Can you give us some paperwork, Mike, on how
Give
it
you whatever
reads?
you need.
I don't know if you have anything, because I remember how it read a long time ago when I was there. But, and I don't know if that's what we're going off or not, but so we can look at the step process.
I
where
can
it
tell you
used to
what's
be.
happened historically. Doug has
There you
that
go, yeah.
document that he
Yeah,
can give
if we
you.
can get that, that would give us something to
Yeah.
look at.
Dawn asked us to check on the Public Works. Happy to do that for you for the next meeting. And then the question of whatever Doug has on paper can certainly be brought back for your consideration, if that's what you'd like us to do. Does that make sense?
I have no problem with doing something on the 9th. I will not be here on the 9th. And if it's important for me to be involved, I can have input with other members prior to that, but I have to be out of town on the 9th.
We'll skip one meeting, have a second meeting.
Yeah, go to the 23rd. Is that all right? 23rd, you good with?
Yeah.
Let's see now.
23rd is.
April 23rd, right through
Yeah,
the Thanksgiving.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That's fine.
Good.
I didn't want to delay it just for me, but if need be, I would certainly like to be here.
Good. We'll revisit on the 23rd.
I'd certainly be happy to sit down with any of you that want to come in and talk to me about it. Certainly.
So we'll get the paperwork from Doug.
Okay,
We can revisit it that
we
way.
certainly will.
We can look at the.
Yep.
Okay, good.
We will, okay.
Next item is to consider a no-cost video opportunity to promote the town of Oakland.
Yeah, I put some stuff in the packet, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or not. Kennebec County has done this. I heard about it from Mike Hebner, town manager in Winslow. And there's a company that will produce a video to showcase the community for the purpose of business attraction, tourism. Anybody that's interested in Oakland could click on Oakland, click on our website, this will be attached to our website, and see some photos, some interviews, some promotional material to help enhance the town. When Mike Hebner brought it to my attention that they had talked with this company, I put some weight on the fact that he was favorably impressed. Josh Rennie in Fairfield is also interested. They're interested in working together. This company will come and do some filming. It takes some time. The thought that Fairfield's interested in is having the three towns work together. Waterville apparently is going in its own direction. They have made some arrangements with somebody else, I guess, to do something similar, but they're not interested in this project. as a no-cost opportunity to the town